When the cloud burns, Iran's attacks on AWS data centers, and the end of digital invulnerability. The first confirmed military strikes on a hyperscale cloud provider have forced the tech industry to confront a question it was never prepared to answer. Before dawn. The tech industry has spent years telling its customers that the cloud is resilient, redundant, built to withstand anything. Multiple availability zones, independent power systems, geographically separated facilities, the promise was always the same. Your data is safe, your services will run, the infrastructure will hold. On March 1st, 2026, that promise met reality. Before dawn, Iranian Shahed drones struck 2 Amazon Web Services data centers in the United Arab Emirates. A third commercial data center in Bahrain was hit shortly after. The strikes caused structural damage, knocked out power, and triggered fire suppression systems that flooded server rooms with water. The internet didn't go down, but for millions of people across the Gulf region, it might as well have. This was not a cyber attack. There were no 0 days, no phishing campaigns, no sophisticated intrusion. The tech industry often talks about the cloud as though it were something abstract and untouchable. But the cloud runs on data centers. Those data centers have an address, and that address can be hit by a drone. The attack drone strikes damaged 3 Amazon Web Services data centers in the UAE and Bahrain on Sunday, March 1st, knocking 2 of the ME Central 1 region's 3 availability zones offline and triggering outages across EC2, S3, DynamoDB, Lambda, RDS, and other core services, and marking the first confirmed military attack on a hyperscale cloud provider, according to Uptime Institute. The strikes critically impaired 2 out of 3 cloud availability zones in the UAE region and 1 availability zone in the Bahrain region. Because multiple zones went down simultaneously, standard redundancy models failed. AWS confirmed structural damage, power disruption, fire, and water damage from suppression systems. The architecture of AWS regions is built around a specific assumption, that failures are isolated. A power outage hits one zone, the others absorb the traffic. A hardware failure takes down one cluster, the redundant systems take over. A popular assumption among engineers had been that it would take a meteor strike to knock out an entire AWS region. The Gulf events tested, and in parts exposed the limits of that model in ways engineers had rarely anticipated outside extreme natural disasters. A coordinated military attack across multiple sites within the same geographic region is something no cloud architecture was designed to survive. Why Iran targeted the Cloud Amazon's data center in Bahrain was targeted by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps for the company's support of the U.S. military, Iranian state media said. Iran's Fars news agency said on Telegram that the Bahrain facility had been deliberately targeted to identify the role of these centers in supporting the enemy's military and intelligence activities. The U.S. military uses AWS to run some of its workloads, including running Anthropic's AI model Claude for some intelligence functions. AWS has declined to comment on the Iranian claim, and it is not known whether the attacks impacted U.S. military computing workloads. The justification Iran offered reveals something important about how modern warfare is beginning to view digital infrastructure. Iranian authorities claim the attacks were justified because U.S. military and intelligence operations allegedly rely on cloud infrastructure provided by American tech companies. Iranian officials labeled the facilities legitimate wartime targets. Whether or not those specific claims about military data are accurate, the strategic logic behind them is increasingly difficult to dismiss. The boundary between commercial cloud computing and military operations has largely vanished. The Pentagon's Joint Warfighting Cloud capability and its joint all-domain command and control networks run on the same commercial infrastructure that serves banks and ride-sharing apps. The cascade. The immediate impact spread far beyond the facilities that were hit. Ride-sharing and delivery platform Careem, payments firms HubPay and Elan, data management company Snowflake, and several major UAE banks, including Emirates NBD, First Abu Dhabi Bank, and Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank, all reported disruptions. AWS advised customers to activate disaster recovery plans and migrate workloads away from the affected Middle East regions. When Iran attacked the UAE's data centers, it caused widespread disruption to the local banking system. Commercial data centers enable most of the technology that runs the modern world, including AI systems. The disruption did not stop at the Gulf. Pakistan's SadaPay went fully offline, its entire application knocked out because its backbone ran on the same AWS Bahrain facility. AWS waived all usage charges for its Middle East region for the entire month of March 2026, an unprecedented move that underlined the scale of the damage. Iranian drone strikes on Amazon Web Services data centers in the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain also directly disrupted the higher education sector, with universities that had migrated their student information systems, portals, and internal services entirely to AWS, finding themselves unable to operate. The attacks continued. 1. March 1st was not an isolated event. The Financial Times reported that an additional Iranian drone struck an Amazon data center in Bahrain on April 1st. Iranian state media claimed that Iranian forces attacked an Oracle data center in Dubai on April 2nd. Iran state media also issued a statement that it will target American companies, including Microsoft, Google, Apple, Meta, Oracle, Intel, HP, IBM, Cisco, Dell, Palantir, and NVIDIA. These attacks came after Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps threatened to attack economic centers and banks related to U.S. and Israeli entities in the region. The problem extends beyond the data centers themselves. 17 submarine cables pass through the Red Sea, carrying the majority of data traffic between Europe, Asia, and Africa. With Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz and renewed Houthi threats in the Red Sea, both critical data choke points are now in active conflict zones simultaneously. One network intelligence analyst described the simultaneous closure of both choke points as a globally disruptive scenario without modern precedent. What cloud architecture was not built? For the technical failure exposed by the attacks goes beyond any single vendor's design choices. It reflects an assumption that ran through the entire industry, that the threats to digital infrastructure were virtual. The attacks were the first known military strikes at an American hyperscaler's infrastructure, underscoring how critical data infrastructure is emerging as a potential target in modern warfare. As more and more parts of the economy rely on these data centers, they correspondingly become increasingly attractive targets. Multi-AZ deployments. The standard redundancy approach that distributes workloads across multiple availability zones within a single region were designed to survive infrastructure failures, not coordinated physical attacks across an entire geographic area. When all three availability zones of a region exist within range of the same drone strike campaign, geographic redundancy within that region provides no protection. Business exposure ran far wider than most affected companies realized. Many had no meaningful Middle East presence. Their cloud workloads were simply routed through the region, invisible to them until now. The legal and financial fallout. The aftermath created a legal landscape that no enterprise had prepared for. Standard commercial property and business interruption insurance policies frequently exclude acts of war. Companies must aggressively scrutinize their insurance coverage and secure specialized war risk policies to ensure they are protected from geopolitical violence, though such policies are complex and heavily contested by underwriters. Counterintuitively, Amazon's stock rallied approximately 3% following the attack. Financial analysts note that this physical vulnerability will likely force enterprises to abandon single-region deployments, effectively driving up cloud revenues as companies adopt more expensive multi-region architectures. The market's reaction reflects a cold calculation. The attacks, paradoxically, may accelerate cloud adoption by making the case for more sophisticated and expensive architectures. Companies that were running on single-region deployments now have an undeniable business case for multi-region redundancy. What comes next? The attacks have forced a fund,